This transmission covers sex magic, love magic, dark magic spells, the karmic repercussions that result from the practitioners of such dark arts. We also cover the personality profile of dark witches, warlocks and African witch doctors who engage in sex magic and dark arts spells. We discuss a few notable cases where black witches and warlocks have engaged in repeated sex spells and dark arts rituals only to find themselves and everyone around them spiralling into insanity and darkness. We conclude with simple tips to identify people who practice dark arts, how to handle them in a safe and peaceful manner from a psychological and spiritual perspective. The intention of this video is to educate our viewers on how to identify SX spells, love spells, SX diseases, toxic personalities, organised crime agendas, red flag relationships, to empower you with practical, simple tips that will make your life safer and the lives of people around you experiencing these low vibrational acts safer. By invoking the blue flame of Archangel Michael for protection, to protect all people listening to this transmission, we also invoke the violet flame of Saint Germain of etheric protection, transmitting all lower energies to the highest vibration of white light in all directions of time and space, and all the negative energies associated with this teaching be transmitted into the highest resonance of love and light, forgiveness, peace and healing. Namaste. What is SX magic? SX magic is when a dark arts practitioner utilises SX spells to woo, love bomb, or win the affections and or bank balances of their intended SX target. Incubus and succubus energies are male and female orientated etheric demons attached to people who perform SX spells. They telepathically interact with their dark arts host to suck the life force, vitality, prosperity, spiritual and other gifts from innocent and clean targets that they get intimate with. SX transmitted demons are demonic dark entities that are attached to dark arts practitioners. They jump from the dark arts witch or warlock or witch doctor during intimate relations to its host target. This normally results in the host target becoming mentally unwell, suffering depression, suicidal ideations, extreme mood swings, and in some cases heart attacks, strokes, cancer, and sudden death. SX transmitted diseases include dark arts practitioners transmitting SX transmitted illnesses such as HIV, hepatitis, venereal disease to its target host during intermingling of their wands and pouches. SX transmitted debts is when a dark arts practitioner transmits their financial debts, credit card debts, loans, mortgages, drug, gambling, family debts to the host target during or post intimate intermingling. SX transmitted disasters is when the dark arts practitioner sucks the life force, skills, wisdom, gifts, good karma and prosperity out of their host target and deposits their darkened, diseased energies and demonic entities to their partner during intermingling. This results in the life of the host target falling apart and them losing favour in their communities. They typically lose most of their money and assets and attract bad luck until they find a master healer to heal the enormous damage caused to their aura, their chakras, their mind, their emotions, physical bodies, souls and bank balances. Personally, I've witnessed and healed many cases of SX transmitted demons, SX transmitted diseases and SX transmitted disasters from many people over the past 25 years. I've personally witnessed the wildest, most extreme acts of depravity that you can imagine performed by these dark arts practitioners. Sit back and learn from what I've witnessed in life so you don't fall into the same traps and create the same disasters and disease and unnecessary suffering in your own life. Once upon a time, I met a woman at a spiritual school who I refer to as Miss Gemini because her sun sign is Gemini. She liked to party. She was loud, vulgar, boisterous and slept around with many undesirable men in society. She was always flush with cash and travelled around the world in luxury while never seeming to have a job. She claimed to have failed high school. She claimed to be illiterate, which was true until she hit her 40s. And she was addicted to SX, drugs, drinking and partying. Miss Gemini was defined by her extreme greed and selfishness and a complete lack of remorse and inability to accept responsibility for any of the harm she caused her targets. Miss Gemini's lifestyle and income intrigued me, so I covertly befriended her to get to know how she made her money, and what I learned opened my eyes to the underworld and the murky depths of the shadow side of humanity. I noted that Miss Gemini engaged in acts of sabotage and intentionally caused conflict and discord in most relations in her life. I also noted that she appeared to have no empathy or concern for the long list of people whose lives she had harmed or unalived. In most cases, Miss Gemini would target a person to destroy due to her jealousy about their looks, their spiritual gifts, their wisdom, their home, their jobs, or their partnerships in life. I also witnessed Miss Gemini energy harvest many other people's energy, their life force, their good health, their money, their relationships, purely as she was too lazy to work and earn a living herself. Most notably, I observed Miss Gemini running malicious defamation campaigns against her spiritual competitors to destroy their businesses, their reputations, their partnerships, family relations and health. It was noted that Miss Gemini is a master manipulator, a pathological liar, a serial thief and a fraudster. All of her income and assets were earned through nefarious channels and criminal methods. The blood money she extracted from her nefarious crimes resulted in many people within her inner circle passing over, while she and her family allegedly benefited from her ill-gotten blood money. It has been observed that Miss Gemini refused ever to accept responsibility for any of her crimes or mistakes in life. She consistently blamed all of her dramas and crimes on everyone else around her. I learned that this colourful woman, called Miss Gemini, was a mafia hoe since she was 15 years old. It was noted over many years that she was also a black widow, as her many former partners and husbands passed over in curious circumstances way before their time. Miss Gemini confided me around 2006 that she contracted HIV, hepatitis C and many STDs, yet she refused to use protection during After Dark intermingling. She also did not admit to any of her partners that she was carrying notifiable infectious and venereal diseases. Miss Gemini boasted to me about intermingling with thousands of men, women and children around the world, in the process allegedly spreading infectious disease and venereal diseases and STDs around Mother Earth. Miss Gemini also allegedly boasted about having access to children at orphanages around the world, including the Philippines, Mexico and India, in addition to being left alone, babysitting children and toddlers in both Australia and Italy. For the record, I despise pedophiles and believe that developing nations should ban all foreigners from visiting their children housed in orphanages, regardless of how much money they donate to that charity or orphanage. The most notable features of Miss Gemini are her extreme acts of violence directed towards people she was jealous and envious of. Miss Gemini is famous in the global spiritual community for making public threats to unalive people at spiritual and professional development events in Australia, Italy, the Philippines, India and other nations. Miss Gemini's crimes were well organised against many innocent people, so please listen and watch carefully for the red flag so you can protect yourself from similar personalities. Many of Miss Gemini's threats have been made public at events with 600 plus people witnessing the violence and the threats, yet people would always remain quiet due to her affiliations with the mafia. It should be said that when she attends a spiritual event that I was present at, I would turn my back and walk to the other side of the room, and nowadays people in the spiritual community boycott spiritual events. If Miss Gemini is in attendance, people just walk out and never return. Miss Gemini has a known long history of crime. She is a well-known alleged arsonist, and many homes around her inner circle mysteriously burn down after she flies into violent rages and racks up large debts that she cannot pay. She is notorious for her alleged role in drug manufacturing and drug trafficking. She boasts about these crimes publicly. Miss Gemini can be defined by her extreme acts of greed. She loves money and she'll do anything to unalive, bash or seriously harm any person or business to make money. She has no care or concern for the suffering her crimes have caused to innocent victims. Miss Gemini is famous for allegedly helping import some of the biggest shipments of drugs into Australian ports over the last 18 years. Yet curiously, she's never jailed for any of her alleged crimes, despite boasting of her involvement publicly. Since 2007, Miss Gemini and her criminal associates have allegedly created a lucrative drug manufacturing and trafficking business around the world, making them all wealthy. This trafficking trade has allegedly expanded to human trafficking. Miss Gemini's criminal enterprise involves many top accountants, lawyers, bent cops, corrupt politicians and criminal barristers. One such criminal barrister was famously taken out in cold blood in 2016 in a Melbourne street after Miss Gemini boasted about threatening to silence him for his willingness to come clean and expose her alleged role in many unalivings, theft, fraud and abuse scandals. Personally, I've witnessed Miss Gemini's abuse of power over the past 20 years and we describe her as the most evil criminal alive on the planet today. Miss Gemini is a walking billboard for mafia success that claims that crime pays well in Australia, and indeed it does. Miss Gemini has an unsavoury dark side. She's well known to perform in Melbourne underground kink trade. She specialises in fetishes of B&D and S&M torture. The more pain she inflicts on her subjects, the more sexual gratification she receives. Searches of Miss Gemini's former Instagram profile revealed her dressed up in her kink dominatrix uniform with a whip in her hand. I've heard many horror stories of grown men, captains of industries, famous celebrities, sports stars, spiritual masters, spiritual gurus, famous politicians, top lawyers, doctors, surgeons, musicians, artists, filmmakers, who Miss Gemini has had after dark relations with. Many secret videotapes and D-pics later surface of Miss Gemini's male and female subjects in questionable acts with her. These targets of Miss Gemini are subsequently blackmailed and bribed with unsavoury SX tapes. If you are one of these men, please know that these D-pics and vids get circulated around the spiritual groups. I've seen many of Miss Gemini's D-pics The women at the spiritual groups pull up these images on their phones and show them to me and send them on to other women, gossiping. For the record, I've never sent a D or a V pic ever. However, I don't judge grown adults who have engaged in this behaviour. This video is purely a teaching lesson so you don't make the same mistakes others have made before you. My concern about Miss Gemini's behaviour is how she exploits people captured in the D and V pics and the subsequent harm to their life that comes. Miss Gemini is famous for being lazy and not wanting to work. Instead, she allegedly relies on theft, fraud, blackmail, bribery, identity theft, identity fraud, unaliving for hire, drug trafficking, a madam for pedos, human trafficking, and standover thuggery for her income streams. Miss Gemini claims to be a successful entrepreneur, which is a curious trade for a serial criminal woman. Miss Gemini also publicly boasts about unaliving dozens of people. Miss Gemini is cold and lacks empathy for any of the harm her bashings, her torture, unalivings causes her subjects and their families. Miss Gemini is well known for defaming people and the families of her unalived victims. Spiritual underground circles claim Miss Gemini has allegedly unalived 47 people to date. This does not include any people who have gone kaput after consuming any of the drugs she has allegedly manufactured or trafficked. That's believed to be around hundreds of millions of people. Nor does that include any of the thousands of people she has allegedly affected with HIV, AIDS, hepatitis C, STD around the world over the past 18 years. Miss Gemini has been banned for life from attending many spiritual schools around the world since 2004. She was banned for life by the Asia Pacific senior teacher and global director of the spiritual schools that she attended. This never stopped Miss Gemini, however, from attending such spiritual schools that she was banned from. Despite being uninvited and told to leave spiritual events constantly, she continued to arrive and harass and defame and bully many spiritual participants and made a general nuisance of herself at these events over the past 19 years. The situation became so bad that in 2005, 15,000 plus people in the state of Victoria in Australia alone had made written complaints about Miss Gemini and boycotted events and the spiritual school she attended. This was due to her extreme acts of violence and threats levelled at other students and their families. By 2018, Miss Gemini had been subjected to tens of thousands or more of written complaints about her violence and threats towards participants at spiritual events. It is common knowledge that when Miss Gemini makes a threat to unalive someone, she follows it up and delivers on her threats. Hence the reason why many thousands of spiritual students in Victoria alone have indefinitely boycotted various spiritual schools across Victoria and Australia, the Philippines and India. Well-known fact that Miss Gemini enlists dodgy spiritual gurus, dark shamans, spiritual masters and an African witch doctor to perform unalive ceremonies, energy harvesting ceremonies and soul transfer spells towards people she is jealous of. Many years ago, when I was young and naive, I was one of the spiritual practitioners who Miss Gemini took to see this African witch doctor when she falsely claimed at the time that he had magic healing herbs from the Amazon rainforest. Myself and other spiritual female yogis attended this African witch doctor at his filthy, dirty, dingy garage in the Melbourne suburbs. The witch doctor promised to heal my post-surgical blood clots in my leg. Instead, he performed energy transfer rituals, sending my pure energy to Miss Gemini, and he did the exact same thing to the 3 other spiritual yogis in his premise. At the time, I was naive and innocent, and I became seriously physically ill as a result of these dark arts rituals. It took me 10 years to heal my body after this event. People say I was foolish, but I was not the only one. This has happened to hundreds of people in Victoria, Australia, and around the global spiritual community. We all believed falsely that this African witch doctor was a shaman. So I trust that other spiritual practitioners and healers learn from my mistakes and keep well away from African witch doctors and instead stick to proven healing methods. I healed my leg with traditional Chinese medicine from a well-trained acupuncture therapist and energy healing. It is important to note that what goes around comes around. The witch doctor in question suffered 15 years of extreme misfortune, and Miss Gemini's schizophrenic tendencies turned into full-blown sociopathic personality disorder. Miss Gemini proceeded to allegedly become a serial unaliver and one of the most vile criminals on the planet today. Around 2018, Miss Gemini had allegedly formed satanic cults that involved strange unalive rituals held at various properties across Victoria, Australia, the Philippines and India. These events normally followed the break and enter of various Melbourne-based graveyards and cribs. On some occasions, human body parts had been disturbed and stolen. These are well-documented facts in the mainstream media. It's a well-known fact in global spiritual circles that satanic cult coverns utilise stolen human remains during their graveyard and death magic spells. It is unlawful to break and enter and steal human remains from graveyards. It is against spiritual law to disturb the dead after they've been laid to rest in graveyards. These crimes have been reported to numerous police agencies. They are very aware of my thoughts about Miss Gemini and her crimes against humanity. It's a well-known well-known fact in global spiritual circles that Miss Gemini is well protected by senior mafia figures, claim that she is allegedly either the illegitimate child of the godfather of the Victorian mob or his niece. Miss Gemini has never quelled any such rumours. Miss Gemini has failed to break the cycle of intergenerational violence in her alleged mafia family by being the nominated spiritual practitioner in her family and continuing the cycle of abuse of her actions. Miss Gemini boasts about allegedly sleeping with thousands of men, women and children while practicing unsafe sex and transmitting infectious diseases and STDs to her unaware of victims. I know of many young beautiful women in my former spiritual school who party with Miss Gemini at raves and dance parties and nightclubs and later become so mentally broken after allegedly being RAP'd and blackmailed with SX tapes while being in Miss Gemini's company. The level of post-traumatic stress disorder and mental health struggles that these beautiful young women who party with Miss Gemini suffered was on the extreme scale. Miss Gemini boasts about using SX spells and love spells to entrap and ensnare her targets. It's common knowledge that Miss Gemini has extensive plastic surgery to look like me when I was in my 20s. For some strange reason, Miss Gemini has an obsession with me and copying everything I do in my life. When Miss Gemini uses SX spells, men fall helplessly in love with her and engage in risky SX acts. Then many weeks, months later, are left in a zombie state wondering how on earth did they end up with such a nasty, filthy, dirty hoe. This is due to Miss Gemini's use of black magic. If you're attracted to a person who is not your normal type and this person knows how to feed you with what you want to hear and is keen to progress the relationship to SX quickly, and this person hits you up for money, gifts, holidays, lucrative business contracts, unplanned pregnancies, and living together quickly, then you may have been a victim of black SX magic. When someone performs SX magic on me, I feel repulsed and physically ill, and I walk away from the person who abuses their power. SX magic only works on people who don't perform meditations and energy healing on a daily basis. If you're connected to your higher soul, you generally don't fall for such nasty art spells. Additionally, I've noted a pattern of SX transmitted disease, excess transmitted debt, and spiritual transmitted debt, and SX transmitted demons to many of Miss Gemini's former lovers. I have personally observed over the past 20 years that most of the men that have SX relations with Miss Gemini become seriously ill. Unfortunately, some become extremely ill and pass over after intimate relations with Miss Gemini. These individuals that do survive are often mentally fractured and have spiritual fracturing at the soul level. Miss Gemini is a psychic vampire who sucks a life force out of her victims and targets. In fact, Miss Gemini has boasted to me in 2006 and 2007 how she sucked the life force out of her targets and lovers. However, for public safety reasons, I've never revealed this method and never will. Often, like Miss Gemini's targets have swapped their personalities and good karma with Miss Gemini during their intimate acts. Most of Miss Gemini's former lovers lose many of their gifts in life. Many of Miss Gemini's former lovers' physical bodies become ravaged with disease such as HIV, herpes, STDs after intermingling with her. They report to me they often feel tired, drained and exhausted and can barely get out of bed and struggle to work. Miss Gemini paints the victims of her many crimes as crazy, obsessed people, when the sad truth is everything that people complain about her crimes is in fact real. In many cases, it has been noted that Miss Gemini makes false police reports about her lovers and gets them jailed on false charges. It should be stated that Miss Gemini also runs public defamation and campaigns against her victims of her many crimes. She utilises well-placed male figures who occupy public positions to publicly denigrate and defame the victims of some of her crimes. The truth is, Miss Gemini is a violent aggressor in all of her personal relations. Thus, she plays the victim's card to win sympathy and control of her partner's assets and bank balances after jailing them. Miss Gemini spreads defamation about people in her circle to control and manipulate them. So I have noted it's best to not engage with this type of narcissistic personality like Miss Gemini, as it's toxic and low vibrational. So we do have remedies and protections to heal from this type of narcissistic abuse and this SX abuse at the end of the video. So jump into that section of the video and click on the index in the description below. Otherwise, thanks for liking and subscribing to this content, as it helps keep the algorithm to reach people who have suffered such narcissistic abuse to get help. Around 2007, Miss Gemini came to me for an exorcism. She was being taunted by demons that she claimed were forcing her to be violent and unalive people. Different spiritual teachers from across schools around Australia were calling me and telling me Miss Gemini and her boyfriend then were permanently banned for life from their spiritual schools and groups due to Miss Gemini's antics of lying on the floor like an ice-infested wiggling maggot and screaming at me and other horrified spiritual practitioner onlookers to get the demons out of her mind and body. During other public events, Miss Gemini pretended to be a wild dog on heat and urinated on public artifacts with people watching on in horror. On other occasions, she stole guns from an ashram and allegedly went on an unalive spree, killing local village people. It's a well-known fact that Miss Gemini adores guns and talks publicly about unaliving people. She gets off on it. It was an act of profound stupidity of epic proportions for the master of the spiritual school to even allow Miss Gemini to attend his ashram, yet alone let Miss Gemini anywhere near his weapons cache so she could harm people. This alleged unaliving was later followed by 2 alleged group after dark intermingling sessions, where several people who claimed to have been intimately violated at the event left shattered and requesting assistance from me so they could function again. I've observed over the past 18 years or so that the demons that have inhabited Miss Gemini's body have grown in number each time she slept with an African witch doctor. Myself and another spiritual practitioners asked the witch doctor how did he transfer demons to Miss Gemini. He answered through SX. I won't go into detail about how it occurs. However, these demonic entities can be transferred from one host to another through SX. One of the demonic entities have existed for thousands of years and keeps transferring from host to host. The demonic entities often may incite the host human to inflict heinous crimes against humanity. Miss Gemini's demonic entities have only grown in years, in correlation with her skyrocketing history of allegedly committing serious crimes. The more Miss Gemini engages in advanced spiritual practitioners, the more her mental state has declined, escalating her depraved criminal acts. This is despite me forgiving Miss Gemini and cutting links to her on more than 10,000 plus occasions over the last 18 years, which goes to prove that some people with narcissistic and multiple personality disorders, energy healing doesn't work on them. Sexually transmitted demons are transferred during jiggy jiggy is a real world case situation. So be warned. The moral of this story is to be careful who you bed. Some men, and indeed some women, should never put their wands, or indeed their pouches, anywhere near Miss Gemini's filthy, dirty pouch, as their wands or pouches may become infected with filthy STDs, demonic entities, and infectious diseases. Spiritual transmitted diseases from SX is also real. So too is SX transmitted debts during jiggy jig. I have observed with sadness, men and women Miss Gemini have bedded have lost often large sums of money and assets. Some were allegedly threatened by Miss Gemini and her mafia associates to pay off her many drug debts, credit card debts, loans to mafia figures, leaving them financially destitute. If you don't know how the mafia operates, essentially if they want your house, car, business, intellectual property, tangible item, or your partner, they'll just take them. They take whatever they want. Then you most likely will be The mafia uses extreme acts of violence, threats, defamation, abuse, spent cops, dirty politicians to enforce their regime of violent crime. Other men who have had relations with Miss Gemini have been observed to lose their life force. Their businesses collapse, their health deteriorates, they become angry, depressed, they exhibit signs of narcissistic abuse. They often stop making money and become public outcasts in their communities. Miss Gemini is well known to have allegedly run many fake pregnancy and miscarriages scams over the past 18 years. We often see them about once or twice a year. A false pretense of being made pregnant by wealthy male targets who later furnish her with large sums of money to cover her fake pregnancies and medical costs for a baby that often does not exist, only for Miss Gemini to later falsely claim with her high drama and a crocodile tears that she allegedly miscarriages the child. Most of the time, the miscarried child never existed. She sometimes falsely claims that innocent people subjected her to black magic to make her miscarriage the child. I have been falsely accused in the past of making Miss Gemini have a miscarriage of a child that never existed. For the record, I have never performed black magic. If I find any person in my life who performs black magic, then I automatically cut them out of my network and ban them, their partners and friends, from attending my spiritual events, training and ceremonies for life. Miss Gemini has false spiritual credentials. It is noteworthy to mention that in 2004, Miss Gemini had a rank of prep level at a leading spiritual school, and in 2019 she graduated to a level 1 student. Only after her and her ex-boyfriend attended a high-level spiritual class in India, where the standards of entry are much lower. Every time since Miss Gemini has attended high-level spiritual events meant only for spiritual practitioners with good character, no history of drugs, alcohol or addiction, she becomes violent, aggressive and abusive. It is beyond extraordinary that criminals have committed hideous crimes against humanity who are drug, alcohol, sex addicts, that public pretend to be spiritual teachers and energy healers are even allowed entry into spiritual schools in any nation on earth. I've come across people who are Miss Gemini's friends, and after conducting energy healings on them at the healing clinic that I used to run, I know that many of them were infested infested with energetic parasites from their illicit drug use. I questioned Miss Gemini's friends and I learnt that these individuals were ice and ecstasy addicts. I noted a similar energetic pattern of cases who were people who were affiliated with Miss Gemini. They were all mentally broken and damaged through drug, alcohol and sex abuse. For the record, I've never consumed street or party drugs. However, when a person comes to me with a drug addiction, I do not prejudge them, as I'm aware that drugs are rampant across some sectors, demographics of society. I'm more than open to offer healing services to drug addicts and maintain no personal opinion about the ethics of another person's life choice. Conversely, I'm extremely opposed to drug manufacturing and drug trafficking activities and don't appreciate those types of people in my life. Miss Gemini is renowned for allegedly stealing other people's work cover and motor vehicle accident insurance payments and compensations. There are many stories of her alleged involvement of insurance claims on people who don't know her without their knowledge or consent. Miss Gemini and her former partner's alleged involvement in stealing other people's homes, cars, possessions, intellectual property, share portfolios, bank incomes is legendary. Miss Gemini and her former partner, we'll call Mr. X, have admitted these facts to my face in 2007. Naturally, I've reported these crimes to the authorities and they are yet to act. They simply do not care to investigate mafia criminals, as mafia is well known to have police protection. It's common knowledge Miss Gemini engages in identity fraud and identity theft acts. Miss Gemini is well known for copying my clothes styles, my words, passing off my work, some of my qualifications and work experience as her own to gain employment that she has no idea or experience to perform. I've caught Miss Gemini out on dozens of occasions passing off my life events and memories as her own. This is a creepy stalker vibe on steroids that I do not personally appreciate. I should state now that it's a waste for Miss Gemini to pretend to be me, as most people see through her frauds. You can take the hoe out of the brothel, but you can never take the brothel out of the hoe with Miss Gemini. Complained on many occasions to police about Miss Gemini and her criminal associates setting up fake pages and business accounts in my name on many social media networks. So for the record, if you're receiving messages from someone pretending to be me from an account with my personal name or business name, it is highly improbable it is me. I don't use Facebook. I don't use communication apps like Messenger, Signal, Telegram, WhatsApp or the like. I make only transparent public statements on social platforms and thank my followers and subs for their comments. My social discourse has always been open and transparent and positive professional nature. So if you believe you've received bizarre messages from someone purporting to be me, it is most likely not me. Please report these identity theft crimes to me so I can put measures in place to have the perpetrators shut down and people protected from scams and losing money. So moving on to Miss Gemini's ex-boyfriend from around 18 years ago. I noted Miss Gemini's ex-boyfriend follow a similar pattern of abuse of power after intermingling after dark with Miss Gemini. Mr. X, we'll call him, was a close confidant and former lover of Miss Gemini. After having a lurid SX encounter with Miss Gemini lasting off and on for years, I know that Mr. X engaged in similar energy vampiring, alleged theft and fraud type activities as Miss Gemini. I observed that he would engage in distant energy vampiring of hundreds of millions of spiritual yogis, spiritual teachers and healing practitioners around the world. I also noted that he allegedly had a history of theft, fraud and drug trafficking. Mr. X previously admitted these crimes to my face and promised to repay all the money he stole, but he has never done such a thing. Instead, many people in Mr. X's family network who were beneficiaries of his blood money passed away prematurely. Mr. X also admitted knowingly giving false information to police and authorities to protect Miss Gemini and her crime network from criminal prosecution. Mr. X has alleged history of SX deviancy. He previously taught males how to manipulate energy to bed women, contributing to a culture of toxic masculinity, RAPE culture, normalizing that culture against women to abuse power in the female and male dynamic. Mr. X is also an alleged beneficiary and receiving money to mislead and deceive courts of law in the process, benefiting his family and his business associates after receiving alleged stolen work cover and motor vehicle accident compensation payments belonging to victims who were injured. Mr. X rarely works. He openly boasts about being lazy. Instead, Mr. X lives off the proceeds of crime. Mr. X allegedly runs energy harvesting campaigns against the victims of his crimes. Mr. X runs malicious defamation campaigns against his spiritual competitors to destroy their business, reputations, families, and health. This has contributed to many of Mr. X's family members passing over, as they received and benefited from the blood money he received from his spell work and alleged crimes. Mr. X appears to have no informed insight into his criminal offending. He actually believes and publicly pretends to be a highly evolved spiritual teacher. Mr. X boasts that he would be the next Grand Master of the spiritual school he attends, which has led to thousands of people and spiritual yogis to run from this spiritual school in absolute horror. Mr. X is one of the most despised spiritual practitioners in Australia. He is subject to a large number of complaints over the last 2 decades. Mr. X is allegedly closely related to Australia's worst pedophile serial killer, Mr. Cruel. Mr. Cruel has allegedly groomed Mr. X, his wife, and Miss Gemini to help cover up his heinous crimes against children and humanity. I don't want to go into details of these crimes. They're well documented by the mainstream media. You can Google it yourself. Mr. Cruel has also allegedly taught these criminals how to mislead and deceive the courts and police to evade justice and to frame the victims of pedophilia and their family members for crimes they have not committed, further perpetuating the cycle of violence. Mr. X, Miss Gemini, and all their associates like Miss Scorpio dare to challenge these facts, then they are welcome to do so in any open court of law in Australia. All that will happen is the full truth will surface and expose the horrid history of these crime networks' reign of terror over the past 2 decades. For the record, I'm a qualified journalist. I have been so for quite some time. It is my mandate to expose publicly other people's filthy, dirty secrets that they want remain hidden in dark, dirty corners. One of Miss Gemini's close confidants and partners in crime will call Miss Scorpio. She may be a Miss Scorpio Sag Cusper, but we'll call her Miss Scorpio for the purposes of this discussion. Miss Scorpio is a well-known Essex addict and alcoholic. She and her alleged partner in crime, Miss Gemini, regularly surface in thousands of tarot and channeling readings on YouTube every month over the past 4 years. Miss Scorpio has a long history of alleged blackmail, bribery, theft and fraud offences over the past 25 plus years. She has boasted about these facts to my face on many occasions. Both Miss Scorpio and Miss Gemini pack hunt wealthy men using Essex and love spells in an attempt to drain them of their gifts, energy, money and assets. By the time the men wake up from the dark arts spells, they're so weak, ill and humiliated they can barely defend themselves. I'm fed up with these crimes and I'm speaking out about it now because I cannot tolerate it any further. Miss Scorpio has a history of stealing hundreds of her former friends and spiritual associates and business associates' husbands, boyfriends, partners, fiancés for dangerous Essex liaisons. According to Miss Scorpio, sleeping with other people's partners was her greatest achievement in life. Miss Scorpio loves to break rules and views her efforts in breaking up other people's relationships and destroying other females' lives, jobs, careers, self-esteem, reputation, health and families as her key life mission. It is a well-known fact that Miss Scorpio works the poles at nights and provides wand titillization services in exchange for moolah after dark. Miss Scorpio openly boasts that she's a great pole walker and wand titillator, and indeed this is the case. Miss Scorpio has repeatedly been advised to drop her spiritual teacher tag as it is fake and stick to what she is good at, working the poles after dark. Miss Scorpio and Miss Gemini both allegedly mislead and deceive authorities and the courts with knowingly false information about their victims to deny them justice. Their actions are driven by greed and jealousy. Miss Scorpio often frames men and women for crimes she actually commits against them when they try to run away from her. Miss Scorpio solicits members of her spiritual groups to make knowingly false and misleading claims to police to set up innocent people for crimes that they have not committed as payback for leaving her spiritual school and satanic coven. Miss Scorpio utilises allegedly corrupt police that she Essex traps to run illegal search records and gather confidential police intel to assist her to allegedly commit crimes, including stalking, break and enter, theft, hacking offences against many people in her spiritual schools and male targets that she entraps. Miss Scorpio threatens many people in her spiritual group with harassment and arrest by bank cops if they don't give her what she wants. Miss Scorpio runs malicious defamation campaigns against her alleged spiritual competitors to destroy their business, reputations, families, relationships and health. Miss Scorpio claims that she is the most powerful woman in the world and perceives that her actions are justified, as people should not dare to ever escape her clutches. It's a well-known fact that Miss Scorpio is an alleged alcoholic who often drink drives. She has allegedly been involved in many drink driving offences, crimes that she often boasts about publicly, with at least one drink driving offence resulting in her allegedly unaliving a person when she was drink driving in her motor vehicle. This woman has allegedly unalived people to silence them and prevent them from exposing her in court. I've been told that there were 6 people that she has unalived in the last 5 years alone. Miss Scorpio is renowned for bullying members of spiritual groups. She's previously advised me she is so powerful that people fear her and run away from her, when in fact the truth is she's a bully. who demeans, belittles, and bullies people and causes her subjects to cry in public when she rips into them. This is not power, Miss Scorpio, this is bullying. It is an abuse of power and a sign of cowardice and low self-esteem. I have personally witnessed Miss Scorpio change personalities multiple times prior to engaging these public bullying defamation campaigns. Her face changes and a different personality takes over her mind and body. She loses all rational insight into her actions and engages in ferocious bullying campaigns against innocent people whose skills and spiritual gifts she is jealous of. Then later, she completely denies committing the crimes she just performed in a room full of people. On many occasions, Miss Scorpio has dressed like me, bought identical clothes to appear similar to me, copied my words, sometimes verbatim, mimicked my actions, pretended to have the same hobbies, spiritual background, similar academic and work background as me. She also copied my intellectual property and claimed that it was hers, which is not true. Personally, I have such a varied background that there is no one on earth that has similar skills, experiences and work history as me. It is literally impossible. I am well known for being myself, innovative, unique and different. I don't appreciate copycats, especially when they engage in obsessive stalking practices like Miss Scorpio and Miss Gemini. Miss Scorpio is well known to premeditate and plan her crimes against innocent people to the nth degree. She investigates people she scams and abuses and searches their work, academic, financial, social media and relationship histories. She finds everything she can about their lives online and builds a highly oiled campaign against her targets. So please listen and learn from my experiences so you can protect yourself from people like Miss Scorpio. There have been occasions when Miss Scorpio Sag has requested that I make false statements to the police and the courts to set up her ex-boyfriend so she could chase my former partner and steal all of his money. So in her exact words, so she never has to work again. Obviously, I refuse to engage in Miss Scorpio's criminal activities and commit perjury. Instead, I refer to her to a psychiatrist to seek help for her issues and advise her to stop her spiritual practice for 5 years. I subsequently blocked Miss Scorpio and her associates' phone numbers and disconnected my phone number so she could never contact me again. Later, I learned that narcissists like to create drama and falsely accuse people of crimes that they themselves commit. I know that Miss Scorpio was always engaged in some major drama of her own making and refused to accept any responsibility for any of her actions. I also observed, along with dozens of people attending spiritual events, that Miss Scorpio thrived on toxic drama. She loved being the centre of attention. She sucked the oxygen and life force out of everyone around her. I later learned that such toxic traits are major red flags for people with personality and narcissistic disorders. Miss Scorpio admitted to my face that she was siphoning off the energy of all meditation participants and their family members within her spiritual group. When I confirmed how she was achieving this and asked her to shut down the dark arts, she point blank refused. So this event led to a significant number of physical, verbal, spiritual threats against me, my business, my reputation, and my family. When Miss Scorpio returned from a toxic spiritual event in the Philippines in mid-2019, she again threatened me after experiencing another one of her psychotic breakdowns. I literally had to hide at the time under my lawyer's desk as she threatened to come and find me and take me out. Hence, myself and my trusted friends left this spiritual school due to being subjected to extremely violent threats and a complete lack of regard for our workplace safety. It should be said that I spent 60+ hours a week of my unpaid time to set up a charitable school organisation that, as well as healing, teaching and protecting and counselling the students at this spiritual school. No one deserves to be subjected to extreme violence and threats at their workplace, especially when the work is unpaid and all the income and recognition for my efforts goes towards the bully. Twice in the past year, Miss Scorpio and her criminal associates have allegedly hired a spiritual hitman at a famous ashram in India. This spiritual hitman was engaged to target and unalive various spiritual practitioners that Miss Gemini and Scorpio wanted to permanently silence. These crimes against humanity resulted in the death of several innocent people and the near death of several other people and animals who were connected to these spiritual hitman's targets. I just want to say for the record, it's pointless for anyone to send psychic attacks or death spells towards me or my family. As I'm a healer, I will always heal myself and my family from psychic attacks and death rituals. Additionally, when you attack a light worker or an earth angel or a spiritual teacher with unalive spells, the karmic rebound effects will be severe. The key to overcoming the death spells is to refer the dark arts directly to the spiritual hierarchy. Recently, I was advised by the spiritual hierarchy that Miss Gemini, Miss Scorpio, and the spiritual hitman were each given 4 life sentences, the spiritual court breaking of their laws. In addition, the karmic repercussions for their previous unalives and human rights abuses. So it is notable that it is inexcusable to utilize your spiritual gifts to perform dark arts practices. It's also against spiritual law to use the energy from spiritual shamans, gurus, and spiritual healing ceremonies to target and unalive your spiritual competitors and or their family members. I know for a fact that the ancestors of both Miss Gemini and Miss Scorpio have cut all ties with them them and they no longer have any spiritual protection or connection to the divine as a result of their many abuses of power over time. In point of fact, Miss Gemini and Miss Scorpio's ancestors work directly with my ancestors to warn them of incoming dark arts attacks so they can block the dark arts before they hit the 3D world and harm any people or animals. Miss Scorpio and Miss Gemini refuse to accept responsibility for any of their actions or crimes they commit. So I ask that all spiritual practitioners and spiritual teachers, gurus and masters to please do not rob these criminals of their karma. If you keep preventing these horrible criminals from receiving justice, you will also share in their negative karma. During 2018, I was running a spiritual group. I had dozens of complaints a month about Miss Scorpio's bullying, defamation, misinformation, drinking, public sex acts, her failure to turn up and run many of the scheduled spiritual events, and her alleged theft during many spiritual classes. The spiritual masters who run the school refused to act on any complaints about Miss Scorpio, Miss Gemini and their associates. Due to these male spiritual masters who appear to be suffering from cognitive biases due to their previous intimate with these mafia hoes. Cognitive biases is a limited form of human processing whereby the human brain simplifies and filters personal experiences and preferences. It is described as a systematic error in thinking where information is misinterpreted to deviate from the norm of judgment. This distorted mental mechanism can lead to irrationality, distortion, illogical interpretations, and inaccurate judgments. So my time during the 8 months company with Miss Scorpio and the 3 years in the company of Miss Gemini showed me that a personality who exhibits bullying, manipulation, deception, lack of empathy, dishonesty, belittling, defamation, stalking, harassment, terrorizing their victims will never change. Thankfully, I have many wonderful friends who pull me away from Miss Scorpio after witnessing her many crimes and abuse. I was lucky. I had true friends that repeatedly intervened and saved my life when I was around Miss Gemini and Miss Scorpio. Many spiritual masters, Archangel Michael, the Ascended Masters, the Grand Master of the spiritual school I attended, also divinely intervened and repeatedly saved my life when I was in these people's company. Sometimes in the most unexpected ways. Also, people close to me were saved by the angels, the archangels, the saints, and the masters. When I did a past life regression on my soul to understand why I attracted such terrible people into my life, when I've been kind and loving all my life, I observed that I encountered Miss Gemini, Miss Scorpio, Mr. X, Mr. Cruel and their associates in many previous lifetimes. I won't go into details here, but the last time I worked in the Elizabethan castle and courts, and there was much treachery afoot in that lifetime. In these lives, these souls had acted as criminals, stealing my assets, money, and partner, and killing my family members and spouse. I was showed in the past life regression that I am reincarnated in this lifetime at the same time as these criminals to learn the lesson, to stop the cycles of violence and to break the intergenerational pattern of violence, theft and murder in my bloodline. Unfortunately for these criminals, they failed in their life missions this time around. Conversely, when I recognized I was attracting ongoing patterns of violence and trauma into my life, I studied many healing modalities to learn how to heal myself and my family bloodlines to dissolve this intergenerational trauma and cycles of abuse. Additionally, I'm sharing this knowledge with the public so that they too can recognize where they have made mistakes in their life and cease these intergenerational bonds of trauma and cycles of abuse so they can transmute their abuse into healing. Although I've studied psychology at university, I'm not a qualified psychologist. So I sought out expert tips from Dr. Phil, America's favorite TV psychologist, and his clinical experience in managing narcissistic abuse. So Dr. Phil describes people with toxic personalities as narcissists, antisocial personality, and split personality disorders. Captures them into the categories of backstabbers, abusers, imposters, takers, and reckless people. He describes backstabbers as people who undermine, backstab, undercut, and sabotage you behind your back. He describes abusers as spiritual, mentally, emotionally, physically abusive people. He describes imposters as people who are not who they appear to be. They show you one face and pretend to be someone they are not. He describes people who take. It's all one way. They suck you dry and you've got nothing more to give. He describes reckless people as people not being concerned about your safety and well-being. They don't care about you, only themselves. These individuals are not there to help you win. They just are there to make you fail and make life miserable for you. So I'd encourage you to grab pen and paper and write down, say, 5, 10, 20 people over the course of your life in your work, social groups, community groups, family groups, who exhibit these aforementioned characteristics. So you don't continue to repeat this same mistake, you're welcome to sit down and take further notes. Ask yourself, have you identified any people in your life who are entitled, arrogant, and self-entitled? Do they have a pattern of short-term relationships in life that never seem to last? Are they irresponsible, destructive people who place other people's lives, reputation, health, children's safety, careers, and jobs at risk? Are they incapable of feeling guilt, remorse, or even learning from their situation? Do they boast about the crimes they've committed or gotten away with? Do they brag about their laziness and corruption in life? Do they live in fantasy land or delusions? Do these individuals individuals lack empathy for their destructive, harmful behaviours, or are they only concerned about themselves? Do these people thrive on drama, toxicity, or crisis? Do they always appear to be in the middle of drama everywhere they go? This is the best way to identify these toxic personalities in your life. You have people that infiltrate your life with false promises, seduction, love spells, love bombing, or flattery, or are emotionally manipulative. Do they claim false competence in life, bragging about achievements and wins that are not their own? Do they make lies by omission? Do they lie about being married, or being in jail previously, or being addicted to drugs, or being a prostitute, a drug dealer, or a stripper? Are they frauds? Do they steal cheap property, possessions, or other people's illicit affections, other people's time, energy, other people's assets, intellectual property, and money? Do they offer you constant misdirection about themselves and their life? Do they take credit for other people's work? Do they steal other people's intellectual property and pass it off as their own? Do they question you about your background, your life, your health, your finances, your investments, your relations, your work, your friends? To identify how to push your buttons? Do they come across as paranoid or believe people who expose them as frauds, so they attempt to destroy other people's life, their credibility, reputations, career, marriages, to limit the likelihood of being exposed? Do they attempt to block you from communicating with other people to find out the truth about their real background? Do they seek your approval? Do they spread gossip, slander, lies, misinformation about you before the other person has a chance to identify their faults and expose them? Do they have a revisionist history? Do they change the facts about conversations and their life with a straight face and gaslight you and make you feel like a fool if you expose their selective memory and deception? Do they twist and contort facts to fit their narrative? Do their facts change from day to day, week to week, month to month? Do they tell you what you want to hear? Does their power go to their head and overinflate their ego? Do they share secrets with you in order to conspire to reveal your innermost darkest secrets, which they cleverly use to blackmail you with at a later stage, which Dr. Phil describes as the principle of reciprocity? They share private and intimate secrets in exchange for their fake secrets, which they later use against you. They reciprocate with a secret which they later gossip with others about you. So these are all signs of sociopaths and psychopaths. These types of personalities don't feel anxiety or empathy. They don't feel fear. It's important to know you can never fix or heal a narcissist. Don't even try. It's a total waste of time and energy. Narcissists never change. Some people claim narcissists created from extreme poverty, others abuse or neglect. This may be true in some cases. Other people say narcissists were created due to being treated as a spoilt brat when they were a kid and them developing an overinflated sense of self-entitlement. Sometimes narcissists use this strategy to get people before they get hurt, so they don't get hurt. How do you protect yourself from a narcissist? It's important to protect yourself with firm boundaries and consistently enforce them. When people like Miss Gemini and Miss Scorpio, you need to have multiple CCTs in your home and your work premise, and create a new phone number. Get a restraining order. Get deadbolts on your doors. Put military police guards in your home and your work premise. Protect yourself, your family, and your work colleagues from harm. Never take the bait of a narcissist. They will reel you in and gut you alive. Even if they say offensive things to you or violate your rights, just zip it and walk away. The key to handle a narcissist is to be assertive and don't allow others to step on your boundaries. Reject your aggression from narcissist, as you want to be the bigger person and not trample on their rights. Even if the narcissist gaslights you and oversteps your boundaries, blaming you for their actions on you, politely decline to respond and walk away. A narcissist will try to gaslight you by saying you're oversensitive, or you're being a crybaby, or it's not such a big deal, or you're overreacting, or they didn't say that, or what is wrong with you, or that you're blowing things out of proportion, or that they're not that bad. They try to blame their mistakes on you. Don't take the bait of a narcissist. Just walk away and enforce your boundaries. That's the safest, sanest thing to do. Spiritual tips to diffuse a narcissist. I've wondered for many decades how to diffuse these narcissistic personalities in my life, and I found a quick, simple solution to do that. Apart from cutting the links to the narcissist, forgiving them, forgiving yourself, and setting them free. But I found from Miss Scorpio and from Miss Gemini, this doesn't actually work. So I found another technique in my meditation with my team in spirit, and they gave me the analogy that a narcissist's ego is like an overinflated balloon. They advised me to take back my power and energy from the narcissist. All I had to do was cut the etheric links, recall my power back, my wisdom, my energy from the narcissist, and continue to walk away. So I do that by drawing my energy back out of the narcissist overinflated ego, which is the overinflated balloon. I extract all of my energy, my time, my money back from them, and I cut the links and walk away. So take back your power, cut the links between yourself and your narcissist, withdraw your energy from the overinflated ego balloon, and walk away. Forgive the narcissist, forgive yourself for your mistakes in handling this relationship. Mentally accept the narcissist's forgiveness and set them free. Send the narcissist peace, love and light, forgiveness and healing. God knows they need it. Your positive actions will be a form of community service, and this process forces the narcissist to realise that they need to accept responsibility for their mistakes, their actions, their unkind words, and change their behaviour for the better. So I trust these spiritual and psychological tips will give you informed insights in how to better handle a narcissist and walk away from the experience with your sanity, health and reputation intact. If you found benefit from these life lessons and spiritual insights, kindly hit the like button and subscribe, as it helps the algorithm reach more people who are struggling with similar situations. Namaste.